So $3 is a user data cloud. How many of you guys are developers that are out here right now? Awesome. Okay, cool. That's who we want to be talking to. I'm Danny Zuckerman, one of the 3 co-founders of $3, along with Michael Sena, who may be around here at some point, and Joel. So I'll get to the builder part pretty quickly. But up here we've got a whole bunch of online headlines clipped that you could draw a whole bunch of conclusions from about data breaches and security and Facebook being used, lots of stuff like that. Our takeaway here is a bit more general than that. Today's internet is not shaped by users and communities at a very high level. It's shaped in the interest of large corporations. So that's kind of our framing for all of it. And we think that that very big problem statement comes from how user data and social experiences are managed online today. Which is, if you look at the incentives of basically any application or product online, especially anyone that's trying to be a platform, which is kind of in the Web 2 days, everybody, their incentives are to try to capture users and user attention and data, and they're competing not just against their direct competitors in the kind of product market fit area, but basically anyone else who's trying to capture user. And if they capture that, it's exclusive to them. If they do a good job of it, they grow their user base, they get network effects. Now they have monopoly power, pricing power. They basically can dictate the online experience because they can lock users in. And that's not to fault anyone who's done that. Facebook being the obvious example, many others. That was kind of the natural outcome of the infrastructure of the internet up until now. And so the internet of Web 2 was built on exclusive and siloed databases, where there's this incentive built in to grab as much user data for yourself because that's a big advantage. So no fault to them, they just followed the incentives that were laid before them. This, as a byproduct, created these insecure honeypots of data, which attracted hackers and breaches and abuses as a natural. The good news is we can do better today. We now have the ability to build collaborative open networks where data is shared, where network effects are shared. And when we have this, we can completely flip the incentives where it's no longer about to capture user data and networks to yourself, but rather to participate in this value creation that's shared by everybody. And when we have this open distributed network, cryptography, we have a much more distributed model for this data as the byproduct of that. So that is what led us to build $3. $3 is a data network that organizes data instead of siloed in servers around applications, around the users whose data it is. So 3 participants in this network at a very high level. Applications, so any app builder, instead of spinning up a server, storing the data on AWS in their own silo, instead stores it on the open network associated to users. They don't have to store it themselves. They still get access to the data they need. They actually get to participate in drawing data that's saved by other app developers onto that same network. So you get access to a much broader range of data as a developer. The network itself is made up of $3 data nodes. We can get into that later if you want. So we're operating nodes right now, but anybody can operate a node. It's built on top of IPFS, so it's an open network. And then the users. So all the data that's saved on the open network is associated to and encrypted by a user's private key or their DID, their decentralized identity. Not specific to Ethereum at all, goes across networks. And so ultimately, users, without really having to do anything, have all of their data being aggregated around. That's the kind of high-level view of what $3 is doing. The way we do that is, so we got our start on Uport, if you guys are familiar with that project. Been working on identity for a very long time. Lots of people have had this vision of Web 3 where data follows users around, portable, secure, et cetera. Most of the projects who have done that have focused on trying to convince users they should really care about their privacy, really care about their security. Most users say they do, most say they don't. The ones who say they do don't really take much. This room's probably a bit of an outlier, but still, in the broader market, that's the case. We're not going after users, at least not directly. Our target is developers. We build APIs that help you make your product better. So 3 main APIs right now, profiles. So if you're building an application, you probably want the user to have some identity construct, a name, so that other people can recognize them, reputation, credentials potentially about what they have access to or not. Anything that's just like a profile about a user that can grow over time. That's API number 1. Messaging, so decentralized chat. We'll get into like use cases for each of these. But any peer-to-peer communication on your application to make it social, to make it engaging. But if you don't want to store that in the server, you need a way to do that. that hasn't really existed to date. And then storage, so just app-specific data stores, sandbox, so you can store more sensitive, more specific information about your applications. Cookies, preferences, settings, anything that you previously would have kept about a user, and go in this API. So to quickly walk through some examples of this, and in our ecosystem, and it goes well beyond kind of the Ethereum developer, but let's take some examples in the Ethereum app world. How many people here really enjoy sending money to their friends with MetaMask? It's like a really good user experience. Compared to Venmo, it's like better, right? So one of the reasons it's such a pain is you're sending money to a hex address, even if it's your own that you've used many, many times. Like you double check 14 times to make sure it's actually the right address. Should be very easy to just associate a name and a profile to that address, but that hasn't been the case today. With our Profiles API, you can have a contact list. Sounds very basic, but the powerful thing is MetaMask is building this right now, so you'll be able to have your address book of all the addresses you might want to send money to in their new mobile wallet. That will automatically also show up in their Chrome extension because it's following you, the user, around. And not only that, it'll be usable by Aragon or any other wallet that wants to use the same address book. So it's not trapped in the MetaMask silo or ecosystem. It's by its very nature following the user around, so your universal address book. So that's profiles, kind of bringing this just basic humanity to any open network. Second one, messaging. How many of you guys have used the Aragon product? You guys familiar with what Aragon does? Ish. So Aragon's a collaboration tool, basically, it's DAO. 2019 is the year of the DAO. I am a huge believer in Aragon and what they're doing. Right now, you can basically just vote. So a collaboration tool, you can put a topic out there, ask the community to vote yes or no. In any collaboration, a vote or some sort of coming to consensus matters, but 98% of the collaboration happens in the discussion before that. Putting out their views, discussing it, coming to some conclusions. There's no way right now in Aragon or any of these other products to have that discussion or collaboration because they have nowhere to store data between all the different users. They haven't had this peer-to-peer messaging threads construct. And so that will be coming to Aragon. And then storage. So this is the 3-box application. I wish I could show you a demo, but can't right now. But imagine going to lots of different websites, to Amazon, to eBay, to whatever. All this data is being generated about you. Right now, you can't see it. Imagine then being able to go to site and seeing all the data that's been generated as you browse the web in like a Google Drive-like interface, where you can say, actually, that data shouldn't exist anymore. I'm deleting it. Or you can say, this data is really private. I'm locking it off. Or this data is actually really valuable. I'm going to make it accessible to any website I go to going forward so that they don't have to ask me for it. That's the storage API. So over time, all this data about you, I mentioned we came from Uport. We think a lot about identity and kind of your digital self that follows you from place to place and shapes your own experience online. So this data aggregates over time into your whole set of interactions, your location data, your sensor data, your transaction history, on-chain or off-chain. All of this starts to paint a picture of who you are. You can accumulate credentials, whether that's educational credentials or access credentials. And you can start to accumulate different identifiers. It might be your private key. It might be a government-issued DID. Your biometric signature, all of these things that function as your identifier to banks, to governments, to the Ethereum ecosystem. All of these come together to shape kind of the profile of who you are. And you get to now, in this model, make use of it wherever you want. You have control over who sees it. So we're starting in the Ethereum space, but one of the things we're really excited about is we kind of see the Web3 and the Web2 worlds, to use one set of vocab, starting to intersect a lot more. Right now, there's a very clear divide, in part for some usability reasons, but in part also on what's kind of been the focus. With the ability to actually make use of user data in this way that's not just like equal to Web2, but actually more powerful than Web2, because now you have your whole picture of who you are to make use across the internet. The applications that we're building here in Ethereum can start to be not just on par with, but much more powerful than the Web2. So the ways that we see that happening first developers can bring a lot more trust and reduced risk to their applications. So spend way less time worrying about securing your data, complying with GDPR, all of these different issues, tying it to an identity, tying it to KYC. Instead, it just works. You can get on to building your product, and users can see and be guaranteed that their data is being stored with them. They don't have to worry about abuses. The second is now you can deliver better user experiences because, again, you have access to the whole history of data before they even came to your product. So immediately, you don't have to build up like a set of experiences with them. You can just deliver a great user experience right away based on their previous history on other applications related. And thirdly, you can have their messages, follow up messages, any other social features, their user-generated content. It's not trapped in a single platform. Now it can follow them across all the different things. So imagine all of your Telegram and WhatsApp and text messages. You can just choose the interface that you want at a given time, and those messages can just follow you around, and the content's not trapped with the UI. So these are all things that are possible as we build out this set of APIs with developers.
Thanks, Danny, co-founder of 3box. You can check them out, 3box.io, and Danny's going to be floating around rest of today, tomorrow.